Hi, I'm Cray. Welcome to part 2 in our video series on what's new in HEC-RAS 6.0. Now, before we dive into the 3 topics that you see listed on the screen here, let me just wish everybody a Happy New Year. New Year's celebrations are still going on around the planet, but here in Australia, we're at the end of the day. We had 100 degrees today, if you think in Fahrenheit. Got my Aussie bush hat on, my Bogan and Proud shirt in true Aussie fashion for the barbecue. And now the kids are in bed and it's time to record some videos. So let's dive straight into this. 3 topics we're covering today. Pulling inundation maps into Google Earth as a 3D rendering, coding up the RASter calculator for a couple of functions that we'll put into this one, and then looking at some of the new results maps that are available to you in version 6.0. So let's start with the model that we left off with in part 1. And that is the Lake Bonneville model. It floods out here into the Columbia Gorge, but I'm going to back this up a few steps, and we'll use one of the lower lake levels to make an inundation map out of and see if we can view it in Google Earth. So as we did before in previous versions, right-click, go to create a new results map layer, grab the inundation boundary, and let's scroll down to the time step that we saw on the screen there, 8 in the morning on the 5th of January, a few decades in advance. Close that. You won't see it till you compute it. So let me just compute that. And then now that it's been computed, we can view it and we can also export it. So right click and here's your new option, export layer, 3D KML. So this is pretty cool. You can look at these options in the manual, but I'm going to take my 2-kilometer cell size and change it to 500 meters just to give us a little better resolution. Hit OK, and then what happens is it makes a bunch of KML files that you'll see it in Windows Explorer. You can see it making them, and then it zips them up into a KMZ or KMZ file. Now, if you have Google Earth installed, all you've got to do is double click on the KMZ file, and now you can pan around as you may be accustomed to doing in Google Earth. So let's have a look at where the 3D inundation boundary hits the mountainside there. It's a lower lake level than some of the previous geological levels that have some hints of their levels up in the scars on the hillside. But this is not just a just a blue vector layer. If we pan around and go to the downtown area here, you may see, yep, there's some buildings popping right out. So you can see this is in 3D. And if I'll pan to the south here, and you can see Mount Timpanogos. Let's go. You can even go underwater if you'd like. So now, switching gears, we'll go to the opposite coast. This is going to be New York. Actually, let me just take my Aussie bush hat off, and we'll put our New York hat on here for this model. Now, I did a course in New York City a year or 2 back when traveling was still a thing, and this is one of the models we put together for it. Let's zoom in here on Central Park and zoom in even further to the lake. Now, you've probably seen this in 1,000 different movies. There's the boathouse there, temporarily closed. I don't know if that's because of COVID or because of the weather. But what we'll do here, we've got one model where we'll flood the Central Park Reservoir. So here comes the water, and it goes past the boathouse. And then well, you can see the flow directions here. But now what we'll do is construct a box warehouse in the place of the boathouse just to obstruct the flow. And this is just to demonstrate the differences before and after an obstruction or some development. So what we'll do then is run the same flood through, exactly the same parameters and everything else, but now there's an obstruction in the way. So when we turn on the particle tracing, you can see it's getting pinched around there, and it's going to be higher upstream and lower downstream. So I'll take this into 3D as we did in the part 1 of this video series, just to show you how you can visualize these things with particle tracing. Then I'll put the box warehouse in, there you go, and run the same thing with the particle tracing. So you can see where the pinch point's going to occur. We'll talk about terrain functions next time around, but here's the crux of it. New calculated layer. So instead of a user-defined one, we'll start with a predefined one. This is fairly simple, except you got to deal with the no data values. You can look at the coding for what they're doing with the no data values here. It's basically water surface number 1 minus the water surface 2. Hit create, well, there it is. It was that simple. So now I've got a compare water surface elevation layer, but let's turn everything off and see what's in there. Looks like nothing, but that's because it's a dynamic layer. All we need to do is turn on the scroll bar, and you can see at every single time step that we've exported, you can see the difference before and after, with and without it. So higher upstream and lower downstream. Now let's do this one more time. Instead of dynamic though, usually when you're doing an afflux map or a difference map, you're interested in a particular case. So there's an edit button there and a particular profile. Well, it's the max that you're usually interested in. So let's try that on both. So for the after one, we'll do the same thing. Take a fixed profile and we'll use the max. So now I've got the max water surface before, max water surface after. I can give it the name max there and we create the layer. Now I've got a second layer. So one was dynamic and one was static, just comparing the max. Remember, those maxes may not have happened at the same time step though, so watch out for this one. Let's do this one more time. Make another calculated layer, and I'll show you instead of using a predefined one, here's where you just code it in yourself. So I'm going to create one layer out of the fixed profile for the max, and you could change this to whatever you want. I'm going to keep it as the default raster 1, and now we'll add one called raster 2, and this will be the next one here with a fixed profile and the max. So we've got before and after, and you can subtract one from the other. Now I like to leave comments in here, but for now, for simplicity, let's just blank everything out, and we'll just say output equals raster 1 minus raster 2. Now remember, I'm not doing anything to the no data values here, which means it's going to see those as elevations. And I've got a reason for doing that, but I'll explain that later. We'll just call this an afflux layer. So now we've got a third difference map. And again, you can see that this 10,000 above and below sea level, those are not real values, right? Those came from the no data values. And that's a handy thing, because when I go in here and make a map or make a legend for this, I like to use red and green, red for being a higher flood level and green for being a lower one. Let's go, I think our highest level was 2 meters, so we'll go from 2 to -2. I want 10 categories, always add 1 for the outside boundaries, so that'll be 11. That'll give me some even increments. Now you don't want the noise in an afflux map, and I usually go a little lower than this, but we'll just blank it out from negative 400 mils to positive 400 mils, just to show you how that works. Now I'm choosing white. If somebody knows how to choose a clear, I would love to do that. But for now, I'm just going to choose white. Those levels, you can customize all these things. I'm going to take the outside ones, though, the things that are greater than any reality here, and give them some odd colors that don't fit into my palette, just to distinguish the was dry now wet and was wet now dry cells, which when you're in Australia, the typical standard maps have those distinguished from the standard increments that you would see. So I'll pull the opacity down a little bit, and then again, as you hover around, you see real values there, right? Those are the real values for how much water is backing up. But when you go to where the box warehouse was, which was 18 meters above, that was blanked out or set to the terrain level in the automated script, and we've taken it here so we can use a different legend for it. Play around with the settings a little bit, with the opacity. One nice thing, instead of, we can save the color ramp for one, so we can apply this legend to a different layer. So I just saved this as afflux map. You could copy and paste the numbers too into Excel and put them back in there, but this is a pretty handy function for being able to apply the same thing. So now when I go in to a different layer, I can scroll down, and from the end there, that's the one I just created. You will have to go in and change it to discrete if you had that, and match the opacity, which it's great that they have the percentage in there now. You can do that pretty exact. All right, so there we are. I'll show you one thing with the terrain though. Well, the terrain right now, because of the range, is showing up fairly gray. So I like this update legend with view that allows you to see the full range of colors for what you see in your view. So with that, again, you can see where this box warehouse is sitting and with the flow going around it. Now, let's pull in the energy grade line. So as before, we're going to make a profile line. This is the same way we would have done it in the previous versions under the features. So I'm going to run a profile along this and just create one going right through the pinch point so that I can show you the new function that allows you to plot the energy gradient like you've always been able to do in 1D. Now we can do this in 2D as well without QGIS or other tools. Another cool thing, I guess this was in the previous version too, but sometimes you might get frustrated by the tick marks being odd. If you do it here and turn on the tick marks, they'll be on nice even increments. So let's find this shapefile, which will be under the features layer if that's where we created it. So go to features, and there it is as the last one there, the boathouse. And when I pull this in, now there's a preview. So that's pretty cool. That's a new thing that's been added. Hit import. It's just going to show up as profile 1, but I'll go ahead and rename that one to the profile boathouse. So with that, we're going to go into creating a new results map layer, which now has a couple of extra options. So we always could do this the same way, but now energy is in there as an elevation, which again in 1D has always been pretty handy. I'm going to pull the same profile in that we were looking at on the screen. The max is, if we do a max for the energy gradient, it's a little tough to do because it might not, your maximum velocities and water surfaces don't happen at the same time. And so as I pull these in, both at 1240, I'm also going to pull in the water surface elevation at the same time. So I'm just going to set 2 water surface elevations before and after at 1240, and then 2 energy gradients at 1240. So I'm comparing exactly the same profiles. That way when I plot them, I can see the true energy gradients with the velocity head on top of the water surface elevation. So when I plot these though, unfortunately, unless somebody can tell me a way to put these on the same plot, I can plot the energy elevations, there they are, or I can plot the water surface elevations, but trying to get them onto the same plot, I'm going to need to use Excel. And at least that'll give us more control over the spelling of meters, which in European countries is a little different. So I'll pull this into Excel then. I think most people are familiar with taking a plot over to the table and copying and pasting. Now there's some blank cells in there. You could grab them all at once. I like to take them one at a time just so you don't have those blank spaces if the stationing is different. I won't bore you with these all of these details of pulling this into Excel. Maybe we'll do a couple and then just pause the recording while I fill in the blanks for the rest. So what we've got here then again is a station in meters, or chainage if you're in Australia. Then we'll go for the elevation as well, and this will be the this is the water surface elevation before is the first one, and that's in meters there. And so then I'll just paste all 5 of these layers in. So 2 water surface elevations, 2 energy gradients, and then the existing and proposed ground is the same along the profile line that I cut. So there's 5 different time series I'm putting in, including the energy gradient, which I'll copy and paste here, and I'll show you where I got that. That's just by going to table. There's my energy before, my energy after, and I just put those into Excel. So by pasting those into Excel, I can now plot those. So highlight the whole area, insert, make a scatter plot, and there it is. So with that plot though, I need to add the rest of the series. And again, I don't want to spend too much time on this because this is not an Excel tutorial. You may be familiar with doing this already. I'll paste in my Y series, which is actually for the after one. I've got to go back up to the top, come over and then hold Control down, and now I've got the series in for the second one. So repeat that 3 more times, and again I'll just skip ahead in the video so that you don't have to watch them all, and there's all 5 of them. So with that, where's my plot? It's down at the bottom. Yeah, there it is. So I'll take this one and I'll just cut it and put it onto its own tab, and again I'll edit a few things on this spreadsheet. I'll go into the chart design and add titles and add legends and add the axis labels and all that. So I'll pause the recording and let's see, there it is. Okay, so this is now our layers, the 5 layers that we talked about. Look at that energy gradient though. So the water surface elevation is dropping down as you would expect. The energy gradient has a little spike in it. So let's zoom in on this and see what's going on there. Is that possible? I mean, think about that. In a 1D model, you can't add energy. You can't, unless you have a pump or something, you're not going to get from one cross section to the next the energy gradient increasing. In a 2D model, can that energy be coming from somewhere else? Well, this is just one extra way you can interrogate it now. You've always been able to turn on the energy gradient or the energy elevation in a 1D plot. Now you can do it in 2D. So let's have a look. Let's zoom in plan view and see what's going on here. It's hard to distinguish these colors here, so let me just turn the same kind of a ramp on with the update legend with the view. That gives us a little more definition on the colors. But the contours, they've added a few contour bands here. But again, you're not stuck with these. You can type in whatever you want. So I'm going to take it as a 200 millimeter, 0.2 meter contour band, and let's zoom in on that pinch point and see what's going on. Can you have a hump in the energy gradient? So see that? I'm coming up and it peaks and then comes back down. Is that realistic? We could have a philosophical discussion on that. If you've got velocities coming in from different directions, could you ever spike higher than the water surface was when it was still? Let's think about that. So, but let's go in here and I'll show you also how to define the same layer from scratch. So what is the energy gradient? It's basically the water surface elevation plus the velocity head, right? So RASter 1 is easy. That's the water surface elevation. RASter 2, though, we'll take the same fixed profile, is the velocity. So when we take these and define them, and again, I'm just using the default names, now I can go in and use these in any sort of argument. So if I want water surface elevation plus v squared over 2g, my output is RASter 1, which is the water surface elevation, plus v squared, which is RASter 2 times RASter 2. I don't need brackets because of the way that it works here. And then divide that by 2g. Well, I'm in metric, so 2 times 9.81 is 19.62. And now I can change the layer name to anything I want. So when I call this the energy elevation, I will now get a layer that has that argument in it at every point. So let's turn that one on and hover around and see. Oh, actually, you know what? I want to go back first and show you on the compiler. If you have a code in here and you've coded anything in and there's an error, you view the full code, it'll show you whether the code compiled successfully or not. And so it's worth looking at that button sometimes. So anyway, let me go back in now and hover over this one and see. This is the layer we made. You can see those values there. And this is the layer that was predefined. Similar values, okay? They're coming out basically the same. So that's how you would code it in yourself. Now, one thing that I used to do is pull these into QGIS or QGIS and mess around with them there. And so what I just did there is showing the velocity layer. You could do that with any layers. And then once you've got them as TIFF files or ASC files or whatever they are, anything that you've exported that way, you can pull in as a terrain file. So this is my hack. Maybe somebody's got a better way of doing this now to pull in multiple profiles together. I can take in, energy gradients or water surface elevations, however many I want, and then display them as profiles. Okay, so then if you right click or if you click and draw any profile line, you'll be able to turn on all the terrains you want to see and then plot the terrain profile. So let me just zoom back out and show you what you're looking at or what we're looking at here. It's a handy thing to be able to do the energy gradient without having to go out into QGIS, which is the way I used to do it. So look at this, current limitations of the 2D modeling capabilities. There's one. So there used to be a lot more. That might be a little bit ambitious to say there's only one, but there's also only one known issue at the moment. That's got to be a record. I think I've got about 20 things that I need to send off. I love this new version, but there are a few things that I've found that I want to report. In the meantime, though, if you want to see this thing done in QGIS, just Google 84 QGIS and you'll see an Australian water school webinar. So I'm going to scroll through this real quick just to show you a couple screenshots of where is this? I'm pulling it into QGIS. There's the RASter calculator in QGIS, doing exactly the same thing with exactly the same model, but doing it in QGIS. A bit ahead of that in that same webinar, I do some things with the RASter calculator to modify the terrain, which we don't need to do in QGIS anymore either. So that'll be our next recording. I'm going to pull in part 3, show you some of the new terrain functions there. So with that, I hope you've enjoyed this. You can see some of the cool things you can do with this. And again, now you don't need to go outside of HEC-RAS or outside of RASmapper to do these. So that was our very quick demo. I know I speak a bit quickly and just fly through some of these things. The beauty of it, I guess, is that on YouTube you can maybe take it and slow it down to 0.75 speed. if you need to. But also for those who just want an overview, I want you to be able to move ahead and scroll through things as quickly as you need to. So you can pause and go back. I'll try to slow some of these down a little more in the future, but I get excited about this stuff. It's pretty cool, these new features. I'm looking forward to some of the new things that we'll be able to do in 6.0. So with that, again, Happy New Year to everybody out there. I know some people did it real tough in 2020, but hey, let's look forward to a great 2021. We'll provide some new content there. Do sign up for the webinars that are coming up with the developers. You can get a preview of some of these new functions that way, and do subscribe. And I appreciate your time. Thanks so much. Happy New Year to you all. I'm signing off. Thank you.